I've been pondering for a while. Do you find it strange that you just don't hear anything about Fukushima anymore? I mean, you don't really hear anything on mainstream media about this. Not a word. It's like it never even happened. Why do you think this is? Well, to keep the real issues, I would say to keep the real issues from not surfacing.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Miss Linda.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you just cut out. Sorry, Linda. You're back live.
All right. Sorry about that, everybody. It happens. But anyway, I don't know where I left off, but I'm talking about Fukushima, and I'm finding it strange that the media is not talking about this, and I don't think that it's very good that a nuclear reactor keeps leaking into the Pacific. I mean, if we surely think there aren't going to be consequences, we're truly in denial. Now, tonight I am joined by my friend Dana Durnford. Dana is a nuclear proctologist. Yes, I said it, nuclear proctologist. He's an ex-commercial diver. He is a connoisseur of Mother Nature, as he likes to be called, and you can check out his YouTube video. I just posted it in the chat called Horror, The Pacific Ocean Now Dead Due to Fukushima. Now, he is located in one of the most beautiful parts of the world. I have a very soft spot for this part of the world. My father is a Canadian native of British Columbia, and if my father was alive today, he would be so heartbroken to know that this is happening underneath the ocean floor of his motherland of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, my friend Dana. Dana, good evening.
Thank you, Linda. That's great. And show you're very kind.
Oh, thank you, Dana. Well, you're like a fellow countryman to me, you know, in a way.
Yes, I feel that, actually.
It's probably where my love for hockey comes from, is from that Canadian blood.
And pulling the sweater over their heads and feeding them a few uppercuts, that probably comes along with it, too.
Oh, yes. You got it.
That's how the Canadians stop an argument. You pull their sweater over their heads and give them a few uppercuts. The loser boy's the winner of beer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good old ice hockey for you.
The fear and the anger is all gone in a heartbeat. Oh, well, you won, you beat me.
Everybody shakes hands, I know.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
It's a gentleman's sport, it really is, even though it's brutal. But we're not here to talk hockey tonight.
No.
Even though we love hockey, we're talking about something much more serious than hockey tonight, and that is the Fukashima and the issues with the Pacific Ocean dying. Dana, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, and how you've discovered what you've discovered.
Well, that's a long one. I have worked at every industry on both oceans, and I also worked at every industry under both oceans. And I have a total litany of ocean life. That's my entire, right from the day I was born, growing up, that's all I would read was about the ocean. So I had the Jack Stowe Encyclopedia, the entire encyclopedia, and I read it over and over and over until I left home. And so then my whole life has been about, Mother Nature. Money, yes, is great, but Mother Nature, you cannot. I know when I dive, of course, wherever I usually dive, no one else will ever dive here. My puppy's all tangled up. Nobody else will ever dive in those spots, and that's quite a privilege, obviously. And you finish yet, Zoe? She's tearing all the stuff off my table. I got off track, sorry, folks. Now, I come up to the ocean, I go out to the ocean, and I have a plan where I'm going to put 100 cameras in the ocean. And of course, I can't find any life now. It's shocking. So we expand the search for 200 kilometers is a basic way of looking at that. The idea was we can build a spot somewhere and just bring in rocks and everything, and then life would attach it, and we would put cameras there, but there's no life. There's not even bacteria. There is a bit of life, of course. We found around 12 species. We're expecting and hoping at best to find 100, and they're on their way out. And I know that sounds way over the top, but what you have to take into consideration is the ocean has a couple of million unknown species already, well, was there, and that when we go on the coastline for 200 kilometers, taking random beaches that are accessible to everybody, so everybody can go check it themselves. And I mean, that's a hard thing to do because it impacts everybody in those communities, and we understand that perfectly well when we start doing that. That's the whole point is, if we don't do that now, then the future, you're living a dream for a very, very tiny while, because the microorganisms in the ocean have literally disappeared. We're not expecting even to find bacteria in the sand. Now, the bigger products like clams and feeder fish and stuff like that, big up the food chain, they bioaccumulate. It doesn't affect them the same way as it affects the filter feeders on the shoreline. And the shoreline is the nursery for the entire ocean. And so the ocean is a super life. You take a glass of water and you take a sample of that and put it under a microscope, you see an incredible amounts of animals. You can't count them all. A glass of water would have 75 to 100 million phytoplankton, and they create the oxygen, and they're the basis of the food chain. They also sequester carbon, so they're extraordinarily important. And as such, everything up further from that feeds the wildlife on the coastline, and then as you come up even higher, you're talking about the actual inhabitants of the coastline. Now, on the coastline, you should find babies of everything, particularly this time of year when all the sea urchins and sea stars and everything else, just 5,500 species that we recognize only, considering that, we're only finding less than 1% of 1%. And so that's inconceivable to someone like me. I've never seen that in both oceans. I've never got skunked on the coastline in my life. I never went there and not find nothing. And that was the whole point of what I used to say when I was harvesting food, was that we would pick 20,000 sea urchins a day. Now, that's just a tiny percentage in one tiny area, and a diver can only touch a very tiny fragment of the areas available because of depths and times and conditions and ground swells and currents and everything else. And so when I go up to 200 kilometers of coastline, you can't fool me, because I've done every industry in both oceans and in both oceans, and I don't find anything. Only just a tiny, I think when we counted 3 or 4 flies in 200 kilometers, we never seen any splats on the window in summertime with trees on both sides of the highway while we're driving between these places. That was extraordinary. That struck us on the 5th day. We started really noticing that one. We didn't see any of the normal 70 indigenous sea anemones, but not a single one. That don't mean there's not a couple hanging on, because the ocean is supposed to be a super life, so you would expect everything to repopulate immediately. In other words, if you went down with a plow in a healthy place, plowed it over, the ocean would recede that in 2 weeks, and stuff would crawl up and down deeper and fill it back up. And so when you don't see anything, and that the normal birds, 140 migratory birds that are coming along the coastline, depend upon the small fry. The fry depends upon the creatures that are eating the phytoplankton and the other tiny creatures. Now, to put it into perspective, if you took a radioactive nuclide, cesium-137, from the MOX fuel at Fukashima, and you had a glass of salt water with 75 to 100 million phytoplankton, and also full of about 1 billion other creatures, and you drop that isotope in there, it will fry all of them. The isotope will not diminish for at least 300 years, that particular one. So you can dump that now into, and I'll cut off, you can dump that into a bigger bucket and keep doing that, and it'll keep killing everything. And so we're up against something unimaginable that is released upon our entire planet for 70 years, and they equated it with a banana, but you can fill your house up with a banana, you're not going to get cancer. You can fill your house up with seawater, you can't get cancer normally, because I used to dive in it all day. I didn't see any divers with big tumors swimming around. And what ends up happening, of course, is you're killing the very existence of the planet, so the planet has to perish behind that. So if the elites wants to kill off the humans, to get rid of all the useless feeders on the planet, as we've been propagated out there that way for many years, why would they kill the other 8.8 million species? Is the question. And so what it is 2 million corporations depending on that for a living, and all the people there and their pensions and everything else, to the point of where their lie has become truth for them, and where they understood what they were doing, because they're all independent and they're all compartmentalized, and so the big picture has evaded them. And now what's going to happen, of course, as we go up the coastline, and I can guarantee you folks, we are heading up there, it's a real deal. We have a private donor to make sure that it all happens. And we have an organic movement that is pushing us. And if we don't find life, how are they going to look their children in the eye, right, Linda?
That's very true.
Right, keep going. How can you do that?
It's very true, and I had actually learned something from watching your video. I mean, I'm not the scientist, you are, and I did not realize that in the natural essence of things, the coastline usually repopulates itself. Is that correct?
Right away, too. Without hesitation, yeah. If it's a populated coastline, and British Columbia is,
yes.
And I dove the entire coastline repeatedly year after year, both oceans, and it's always the same wherever I went, just amazing amount of, you can't count it in a single spot. You can't count it in a square foot, but life should be there. Like the microorganisms and the little sand fleas and all the other little critters and creatures, and that they're all jostling for every square inch of the first 30 feet of the ocean. That is the most populated spot on the planet. And I used to always tell people there was enough protein there in the first 30 feet of water to feed the entire planet economically, because it will repopulate itself, because they'll crawl up from deeper waters to get in that sunlight. And that's why I mean the sunlight area of the ocean, the first 30 feet, is taken up by superior genetic selection of millions of years of evolution. They have fought their way to the top. And so it was a very vibrant, vigorous environment. And to see it missing has raised every hair on my, I would say my back, but I don't actually have hairs on my back, but it raised every hair on my head to the point of surrealness, where you don't even want to wake up in the morning and face it again. And I mean, who's going to get out there and pull this off and get up that coastline and actually know boat industries perfectly, know the nuclear industry perfectly, know how to handle the ocean, 26,000 islands, 4,000 kilometers at least, and then we're a 1,000-kilometer drive, 1,000-mile drive, and then another 1,000 kilometers in the Baltic Sea before winter sets in. We need a real operation. That's what we're putting together from scratch. We just got ourselves a lovely, absolutely gorgeous history on a boat. It's a search and rescue from a yacht club, and it was used to go out and rescue people. That's all it was used for, was to go out and rescue people. So it has a very, very appropriate history to it. That's all it's ever done. And we have it independent today. We went down to buy the spotlights, the radars, the sounders, the plotters, the GPSs, the flares, of course, the EPs, the we got devices that we throw in the water, or the boat falls in the water and tips over, which is not likely with this boat. This is a search and rescue top notch, 22 foot. It's meant to go anywhere and everywhere on the coastline. It's spotless. The engine is gorgeous, and it's disposable, because that's how this works. All it is about those 90 days and definitively taking away the narrative from everybody out there and trying to move forward with some kind of coercion of life. Because as it stands now, if we don't do this in a year's time, the entire planet is going to lose their minds without a narrative. And that's why you're doing what you're doing, Linda, and many other people like yourself, who are out there and trying to get people to come on board and understand it's not a game. It really truly has happened to us, and that the only way to get the narrative out there was to go up and videotape it, picture everything, take samples, microscopic, get that public every single day, and just push back like nothing we've ever even conceived before, because that's what we do. It's relentless. For 9 months, I haven't stopped. I don't even consider anything else on the planet. There's nothing else on the planet that matters to us. I mean, getting this job accomplished so everybody can have a debate. And we are going to accomplish this mission, but I don't think anybody